Hey, sis, how are you? This is Kivette Minor Kane, your financial liberation expert. I'm coming to you today with another mindful money moment. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to share with me, to be with us. Today, our topic is self-care and self-control. So, here we're always talking about how our emotions affect our money management, being able to make better decisions, create better habits, and experience a better quality of life in harmony with our purpose. And so you're going to get some information today from two amazing experts. One is Shamyra Parker, who is a self-care advocate, and she's going to talk to us about the mindset that goes behind our self-care and what that really looks like. Because here we're not just talking about what to do, but it's about how to do it, making sure that you get those tips and those steps that you can actually use to take action as soon as you leave this platform. And so we want you to be able to put something into application, to benefit from it practically, to create new habits again, and to even have a daily routine where you will continue to build up your confidence. Remember our mantra: self-care, self-love, self-worth, self-first. So this is your time to take care of you, taking care of you so that you're able to now be completely filled up. We want to pour into you, sis, so that you are overflowing, and then you can serve others from the overflow that you have through your existence. So breathe with me, because we're going to talk about some money too. We're going to talk about some habits that we have that aren't necessarily the greatest, and how we can put into action some practical steps to keep us from overspending our money, and to show us how we can save it and have our money working for us, because that's the whole point. So let's take a moment to breathe in peace, breathe out anxiety. Just let that all go. Let it all go. Breathe in peace, breathe out anxiety. Just let it all go. Let it all go. All right. So you're here with me. And I want you to kind of gauge yourself on a range from 1 to 10. How are you feeling? Where are you today? Make sure you got your notepad and your pen so you can take some notes. And we'll look forward to getting into this. So I'm going to introduce you first to, hold on, Shamyra Parker. And Shamyra actually, all right, so she is a self-care advocate, and she has been involved in this field for a number of years. She came into self-care advocacy because of her own circumstances that required her to make some necessary adjustments in life, as many of us do. And maybe you're at a point now where you're trying to learn about how to care for yourself, or maybe some additional tips and steps that you can do to add into your self-care routine. What are you doing on a regular basis? So Shamyra is the founder and chief well-being officer of Born Boundless International. More importantly, just as I said, she is just like you, a high impact woman, a phenomenal mother, and someone who needs powerful self-care. Now, this is not your just basic average self-care. This is, again, powerful self-care. So as a self-care advocate, educator, and healing ally, she creates safe spaces for Black women and women of color in high-impact leadership roles. Shamyra knows all too well how easy it is for powerful women with competing priorities to allow themselves to be pulled in a million directions. And how often have we felt like that? Sometimes we feel so overwhelmed because there's so much to get done, there's so little time, and there's only one us. And so Shamyra comes from a fast-paced, high-stress corporate environment where she managed a territory of 3 states that often involved overnight travel, all while being a mom of 2 small children the last 5 years of her corporate career. This was all possible because she was uncompromising in taking care of herself. Self-care not only sustained her, it nourished her. As Shamyra transitioned to having a greater impact, she realized the typical advice that the more you do, the more self-care you need is not a one-size-fits-all solution. So when things that used to work stopped working, Shamyra realized that for high impact women, only is more not feasible. It simply is not enough. And so today we're going to talk about how do you care for yourself? Not just what to do, but how do you care for yourself so that you feel like I am enough, I have enough, I do enough. God is my provider. And you remember that's our affirmations here on Mindful Money Moment. And so we're going to talk for a few moments with Shamyra. I'm going to bring her to the stage. Hey there, Shamyra. How are you today?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. So excited to have you here with us to
Thank you
share
so
your
much.
wonderful information about being mindful about our money, but starting with that self-care, because we talk about it so often, oh, we say self-care, but the question is, what does that really mean when we talk about what is self-care or caring for ourselves? So how do you define self-care?
So I define it in a number of ways, but I think that it's really drilling down to being intentional and being aware of your desires and your needs and your wants, right? And so when we talk about being aware of those things, I always say that self-awareness is a superpower. So there's nothing that we can do, there's nothing that we can really do to improve our lives without being self-aware. So when we become self-aware of what we actually need, what we want, what we desire, and really like what our body needs to be healthy, and then move from being aware of it to actually taking the steps needed to move in a healthy way to take care of those needs. That is self-care to me
Yeah.
at its most basic level. What do you need to do to take care of you so that you can be healthy, healed, and whole?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Healthy, healed, and whole.
Yeah,
Because we
that's
talk
it.
about, even in our relationships, it's like we can't be a partial person. We
Mhm.
can't be a half a person going into a relationship because it's not going to work.
Mm-mm.
And there
Mm-mm.
is no 50-50. You got to be 100%. You got to be whole
Come
and
on.
healed in
That
order to
part.
make. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So,
Wholeness
what
is
are
a
some of the things that you found during your journey that worked well for you, and what are some of the things that you found have worked well for your clients? Because I know you've worked with a number of women who have had different circumstances, and that variety really supports being able to understand that while we're all the same, we're all still very different.
We are. And, I think thank you for underscoring that, because there is no self care that is a one size fits all solution. It just doesn't exist, right? So I kind of want to lead with that. So anything that I say here, these are guidelines, these are suggestions, these are things that have worked for me and they work for other people. But I think the first step is really being open and having a mindset of being open to understanding that it might be trial and error for you, right?
Yeah.
You might have to throw some things against the wall and see what works and keep trying to see what works for you in your lifestyle. Not one woman have I ever helped to the next woman has ever been the same, because your self-care has to be customized to your lifestyle, your
Hmm.
needs. What is your lifestyle demand? I may be serving a woman here who has no children. I may be serving a woman here who has 4 children. And even that woman's life who has 4 children differs from mine with 2 children.
Yeah.
Is she an entrepreneur? Is she, and all these different factors, right? And they go into what it is, because again, it comes down to what do we need?
Hmm.
Like what do we need? And when we get dialed into our needs, when we get dialed into the things that actually create that space for healing and wholeness, that is going to look different for every single person. Now, when I talk about myself, for me, I will even share it has evolved. I'm in a
Hmm.
season right now where my self care is evolving. And I'm always transparent about that, because I don't want people to think because I'm a self care advocate that I have arrived. Like, this is it. I have arrived. This is it. I figured it out. It's
Hmm.
like, it's this evolutionary process. And
Yeah.
as your life changes, so does your self care have to. And in
Yeah.
this season where I am, I've realized, oh, there's this whole other level of self-care that I'm needing. And right now I'm actually crafting my self-care support team, an actual team. And that is what high impact self-care looks like for me in this season. I actually have it mapped out on a giant post-it on the wall, and I'm filling those positions. And I just think that everybody has to think about what that looks like for them. So I will go back to what it kind of started at for me. And really what that looked like was working on my mindset, right? Had to work on my mindset. I had a lot of scarcity kind of beliefs, limiting beliefs. Coming out of trauma, a lot of times will give you some really unhealthy patterns and beliefs that don't serve you. And so if you're operating in a space of scarcity, you won't be able to really practice self-care, because self-care is flowing from a place of abundance, which is the opposite of scarcity, right? So we have to do some shifting of our mindsets. And I had to do a lot, y'all. I had to do a lot. If I'm being honest, right? I had a lot of work to do. I was in bad shape. And it was the whole poverty mindset. It was a lot of what I thought I couldn't do. But as soon as I opened up, even with this self-care team, if I'm being honest, I didn't think about having a team just for self-care. Like I knew I needed it for work, but you got the audacity to say that okay, divorced, single mom of 2, you need a team just for your self-care. First of all, how dare you? I say, how dare I not?
Exactly. And that's it right there. That not at the end. How dare you not? How dare you not do it for yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and so for me, again, it's a journey, releasing old patterns, outdated. If you think about a computer, right? And people love this analogy because it's so relatable, but think about a computer. When you have a computer and it hasn't been updated, it may have some outdated software. There may be some old programming on it that's not compatible for what you're trying to do. And you have to release that in order to move forward into the updates, in order to be congruent and aligned with what it is that you need in order to be efficient and move forward, right? And so we're just like that. A lot of the programming that we were brought up with, a lot of the programming, other messages that we even get from the media and society keep us in a place to where we're thinking that, one, are we worthy of it? One, there's this whole thing about not having enough time or money for self-care. So having to release those belief systems and understanding that you create the time for it, just like you create the space for anything. So that kind of leads me into the next point. I had to schedule it. I had to actually create margin and space in my calendar for self-care. People often ask me, well, how can I do it? Like, how can I stick to it? I am constantly on and off the self-care wagon. Like, I fell off the wagon last week and I haven't gotten back on the wagon. I don't know how to stay consistent with self-care. And I just, I don't mean to oversimplify it, but I ask the question, how do you keep everything else that you need to do? How do you do that? If your son had a basketball game, if you had a meeting, if you had anything else, a doctor's appointment, whatever it is, how do you do that?
Yeah.
And when I'm talking to women, most of the time they say, I put it on my calendar. If I don't write it down, if I don't schedule it, it's not going to happen. And it seems like a foreign concept because that's our nature. It's counterintuitive to our nature to actually schedule ourselves on our calendar. But sometimes that is exactly what it requires, especially if you want to build it as a habit, right? I see Robert saying something.
Yeah, Robert says, who better to share self-care wisdom than those going through it or living it now? Absolutely, Robert. Thank you.
Robert. Amen. And so I'm always going through it, but I schedule it, y'all. I schedule it right now. I'm scheduling my self-care out about 90 days. I'm scheduling about 90 days worth of self-care. That doesn't mean I practice self-care every day. That's just because I have created a self-care lifestyle, because I couldn't do it as kind of like a one-off activity. I needed it to be, in the fabric of my life. So that's how I operate. But what I mean is like kind of big things, like if I need to get away or I need to breathe some different air, or if I need, y'all, I even schedule time to be in my house and sit still and turn my phone off.
I've had to do that. I've had to do that. And I was just thinking about that earlier today. It's so funny that I mentioned that because I said, I had an accident back in February. I fell, hit my head on the ground, slipped on the ice, girl. And so had sustained a minor concussion, just had to heal from that process. And for literally, it was the first time that I had to like shut everything off.
Yeah.
Like darkness, silence, no activity, because like thinking it hurt. And it's like, wow, there really is like a big muscle in it. That's
working, right. And it needs a break. It needs a break.
And right. And the thing is, if we overwork it, that's where the stress comes in. And for me, the scariest thing was thinking about, okay, there's a concussion. That means there's already damage. I could easily go into a stroke if I overdo, if I overstress, if I anything. So I was like super cautious. But what it taught me was that we need to take that time to be in silence because we're so active. I didn't realize how active I was until I had to not be active. And I was like,
until you had to sit still. Yeah.
Girl.
And that's it. Because this culture that we're in, right? This grind culture, this culture that celebrates busyness as if it's a badge of honor and champions for people to work themselves into exhaustion. That is the culture. And the indoctrination, if you will, into that culture makes it so that it's so ingrained in our minds that sitting still feels wrong. And once you do, you are able to really realize, okay, wow, that's that moment of really kind of tapping in and becoming aware. And you're like, wow, my body needs this. My brain needs this. I didn't know how much I needed this. And I didn't know how much I was doing. Why? Because it has become a normal part. We have normalized busyness. We have normalized. And so that kind of almost takes me into the next tip, I would say, is being ruthless about the elimination of busy. And, I kind of have this saying, I'm like, stop being extra.
Say that again. Yeah.
Stop being extra. Stop being extra. The ruthless elimination of busy. And the reason why I say be ruthless about it is because, first of all, it requires like some extreme measures to just like, for real. If it's inconsequential, if it's unnecessary, if it is not immediately impacting you, your family, your health, or things that you need that are vital to you, you have to go through and really inventory and audit what you're doing and be ruthless about eliminating the extra. Because there's a lot of stuff that we do that's extra. There's a lot of stuff that we do that is inconsequential, that is not feeding our health, that's not feeding our wholeness, and that is not getting us closer to feeling better, right? So that's that self-inventory and that auditing process, that requires self-awareness and self-honesty. Like, you can lie to everybody else, but don't lie to yourself.
Right. And we do that. And that's one thing that I was thinking when you were talking about that. It's like, okay, when was the last time that you actually, and ladies, I'm talking to you, when was the last time that you actually sat down with a journal and a pen and you wrote down, how do I feel? We talk about this, it's still May, it's still Mental Health Awareness Month. So we need to make sure that we're taking an opportunity to raise our consciousness and to truly be aware of ourselves. And the thing is, let's start with being honest. So when we ask ourselves, you look in the mirror and you say, how are you feeling? No. Don't tell me fine. Like, how do you really feel? And wait and feel for a moment. And be like, okay, how do I feel? What does that mean? What does this feel like? Why do I feel this way? And that's when we start to get into the kind of the deeper peeling back of the onion, as I call it, pulling back the layers so that we can get to the core, and really get to a point where we heal and can become whole, just like what you were saying. So absolutely.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. I mean, and I love that piece because that practice is really tough.
Yeah.
When you're used to going and you're used to being someone who's on autopilot because you've got so much to do, you've got these competing priorities, everything and everyone is vying for your attention. They want you here, they want you there, they want you doing this. It is really difficult to stop and really, as my sister, Naima, my sister in self-care, who's out on the West Coast, says, take a divine pause.
Okay, yeah.
You know, take
we're going to talk about that too.
Take a divine, yes. Because you know how often you check on everyone else, but you don't check on you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you don't, you know how when you're passing people and you're like, oh, how you doing? Oh, I'm fine. You're not really actually waiting to see if they're okay. We do that to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it is so powerful to actually ground yourself and just give yourself 10 minutes to pause and be instead of do. We are human beings, not humans doing, not humans doing, but we're always doing. So when we get to that place to where we can be still, we can actually just scan, right? Like, how am I feeling? And sometimes even when I get busy and I do that, I'm like, I didn't even realize I had that ache and pain right there, because we're so good at overriding even minor pain sensations to push, to grit and grind, because we're in this grit and grind culture. And as I preach and preach and preach everywhere, there's a time for grit and there's a time for grace.
Yeah.
And you need both grit and grace to run this race. If you are watching this, you can't make it on grit. You can't make it on grace alone. You need both grit and grace to run this race. And there's a time for both. And you get to take, I didn't say ask for permission. I didn't say wait for somebody to tell you it's okay. I didn't say approval seek. I said you get to take the time that you need without explanation and unashamed to do what you need to do to take care of you. Because I promise you, if you don't, your body, your mind will make you so you can either voluntarily do it.
You can take the time or it can be taken from you. And I'm going to tell you that fall for me was kind of like the time being taken. Because I'm telling you, I didn't know how hard I was working. I was doing like 90 hours a week of work outside of my house. Oh my gosh. No. 60 hours. I'm sorry, not 90. 60 hours outside of the house. I know 60 or 90.
That's too bad. That's low.
But then growing a business on top of that. So I was working 90 or 100 hours a week because, you know, when I wasn't sleeping, I'm literally working. So now I have slowed down some. Still a lot of grit going on here because I'm working on my 80%. Yes. But, you know, in that, recognizing that I needed to care for myself because if I didn't care for myself, I would not be here to care for anything else.
And that's it. Can you underscore that? Like, underscore that piece, because they need you as mommy. They need you as wife. They need you as girlfriend. They need you as daughter. They need you at the church. They need you here. They need you there. But if there's no you, then
there's nothing.
You know, so you have to, like, it's not really an option. It's not, can you afford to take care of yourself? It's, can you afford not to take care of yourself? And what is the cost? And then even in the midst of that, asking yourself, what is this costing me? Mm-hmm. You know, what is it costing you to not take care of yourself?
Yeah. And that's the thing. It will cost us it could cost us our lives. It will cost us so much. And so we're going to talk about that in our next segment. We're going to talk about, you know, self-control and what it means for us to really count the cost. Mm-hmm. You know, to take that pause that you were talking about. So we'll have you back in just a few moments, but I'm going to turn over to our next guest. Thank you so much, Shamyra. We're going to turn over to our next guest, who is Bree Nachelle. And Bree Nachelle is a fabulous professional podcaster. And so Bree Nachelle is a mother, a creative communicator, a writer, a speaker, and she calls herself a professional best friend. She's absolutely, let me tell y'all, this woman is fabulous. Okay. She is the unicorn in my life. So she says, after almost 2 decades as a C-suite executive assistant Bree pivoted her career to use her love of storytelling to craft authentic messaging for creative entrepreneurs. You can find her dishing on life, business, and self-care tips on the fabulous, I'm not going to say that word, on her fabulous podcast. In her native habitat, Bree enjoys sipping wine, reading, or taking a refreshing nap. Oh, that is such an application of our self-care. Bree, come in and tell us how you manage to develop this self-control so that you are able to just take that time and take that pause for a moment to be able to enjoy that refreshing nap and have a little wine. I would add some popcorn into that because that's my favorite combination.
Okay, that's a good combination. Thank you for having me. You know, self-care is something I didn't think about. I'm a mom of 2 teen boys, and they kick my butt. And as a mom, I'm divorced, and I had to create strategies for success because I was doing everything. I was expecting to run my household like it was a well-oiled machine, and that doesn't happen all the time. So when things fall apart or things slip through the cracks, I was taking it very personal, and things happen. But what I found is by relaxing, by meditating, by doing yoga, by creating that time for myself on a day-to-day basis, it allowed me to create a path that was sustainable. I could do all of those things if I gave myself 30 minutes at the end of the day to just take a bath. Or I could, get up, run errands, kids just always have something. I felt like you were always being held hostage at a soccer game or computer tournament or something crazy. So, you love your kids, but you also have to take time to do those things for yourself. So mastering self-control has been extremely hard. Like your previous guest, I have a team. I have the nail lady, the hair lady, the facial lady. You got to have your therapist, all these people that help you to keep yourself together so you can stay balanced and stay in control.
Absolutely. Now you shared a story with me about how you got your spending under control, and it was really in harmony with something that I practice and preach to my community here. These ladies have heard it from me more than often enough. Pause before you purchase. Take a moment. You feel that emotional coming up. Oh, I have to have this, and just wait. Don't swipe your card. Don't give up the cash. Like, pull back for just a moment. Breathe.
It's so important.
Right. And so what was your experience with learning how to pause before you purchase?
So I'm going to be real with y'all. I have a purse habit, and I didn't realize that it was as bad of a habit as it was until I realized I had a purse closet. And then I realized my purses were arranged by season, and then by designer, and then by color. And you're like, listen, you have a problem. So the last count was about 285 purses.
Wow.
Most of those purses are in the process of either being sold or donated. But what I found is that those purses, when you're having a moment of out of control, something you can't control it's not okay. I found that buying something made me feel better. Instantly better. And so you're sitting there, you're like, oh, this is a quick fix. This is a drug. And then I realized, this is crazy. You have lost your mind. You don't have the money for this. Cut it out. So I started something. There's a lady named Tiffany, the Budgetista, and she has a program where she recommends you have a no spend month. And every once in a while on social media, she would say something, no spend month. And I'm like, this lady's crazy. I'm supposed to go a whole month without going to, with all different types of, I like going to vintage stores. I like getting my nails done. So what do you mean it's a no spend month? So I sat down and I said, okay, your nails are a priority. You can get your nails done. That's part of your self-care regimen, but no bling on the no spend month, no glitter, no extra stuff. And then you just going back and forth and looking at what did I want to buy from CVS? Was I wandering through CVS and spent $50? What did you buy? It's making yourself very aware of what you're spending money on. Everyone has been to Target, and it's a meme that says you don't go to Target with a list. Target tells you what you need. And I can't tell you how many times I've come out of Target and I'm like, I came in here for toilet paper, a spatula, and you've left with $150 worth of things. So to go in there, to have a list, I have my little notes app, got a list. You have your, what things do I need for this month? Do I need a white t-shirt? Do the kids need socks? Things of that nature. Keeping myself accountable. We don't always need nice things. You don't need the new AirPods. You don't need a new weave. Do you need all these things to sustain you, or do you have a bigger goal in mind? Right now, my goal is home ownership.
Yeah.
I can't keep doing the things I used to do if I want to get where I want to go.
Right.
So I'm sorry, I'm laughing because she said toilet. I'm sorry, in the comments it said something about a spatula turned into a shopping spree. Target gets everybody. Don't act like it's just me.
What is that?
But creating a plan and making it plain has definitely helped me to cut back on my shopping.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, where that's Shamyra. She said toilet passed and a spatula Target run, it turned into shopping spree. Yeah.
And now we're in the pandemic, and now you see on TV people talking about the increase of Amazon purchases because it's a comfort purchase. You don't need that stuff. And I can tell you, we went through a period of time where it was an Amazon box, and the lady was like, "What you ordering now?" And I'm like, "I don't even know what this is." So we have to get to a point where we say, "Enough. I don't need these things. This is my laundry list for the week. Let's buy the things we need." We have gotten into such a disposable society and watching hoarders. I don't know if in the quarantine I've been watching hoarders. I don't want to end up like those people where y'all in here going through purses and trudging through books because I can't control myself. So we have to have some accountability and self-control.
Absolutely. And I think COVID really kind of highlighted a lot of that for us. I've talked to a number of women who have cut their spending because, not leaving the house, they were just not doing their regular routine. I mean, one woman talked about how she lost weight because she stopped going to Dunkin' Donuts every day.
Nice.
So she still loves the coffee, but she gets the coffee from the grocery store, but she's not doing the donuts. And so she's able to kind of that self-control. She's now aware. We have to first be conscious of what our regular habits are, and then look at how those habits are affecting us and determine whether or not we need to keep it or leave it. Do we need to keep that habit, or do we need to let it go? Seriously.
And a lot of our habits in the pandemic, we've learned that they are not necessary. There were things like going to the bar after work for a cocktail. Did you really need to go get a cocktail? And then think of the money you saved by not going out to eat. Because someone called you at the last minute. Hey girl, what you doing? Let's go eat. These habits that we saw as a lifestyle change, as part of our lifestyle, have changed because we don't have that time anymore. Now it's like, hey, I'm in the house. My health is more important. Let me do yoga for an hour. Yeah. Let me sit with my kids and play Uno for an hour.
Yeah.
How are you spending your hours? Like, I feel like with your money and your budget, we also need to control our time and budget our time properly. Your previous guest was talking about budgeting herself out 90 days in advance. I'm not that good yet. I'm getting there. But we have to budget our time.
We do. And so one activity, and I shared this earlier today in a room on Clubhouse, and I want to share it with our audience, is just to sit down and pay attention to how we're spending our time. Because we hear this cliche often, it says time is money, right? Mm-hmm. And so what does that really mean? First of all, if you're having your notebook and you got an ink pen, write down now at the top of the page, time is money. And then write down, what does that mean to you? What does that mean? Time is money. And the question is, how are you spending your time? Because that's what we do with both. We spend our money and we spend our time. Only thing is, the time we can't get back. The money we can earn, we can go or if we spend it on a good investment, then it'll grow for us. But time, once it's spent, you're not getting it back. So we have to make sure that we're spending our time well. And so one of my suggestions is to take a piece of paper, write down, the 7 days a week, 24 hours, 1 through 24. What are you doing with your time? You know, you take 8 to 6 hours to sleep every night. You got to eat at least 3 hours a day for 3 meals minimum. You know, I eat 5 meals a day, so I eat about, a half an hour for each one. So it's a little bit, more or less, but based on your schedule, based on your regular activities, how many hours are you spending at work? Now, some people are saving time because they're not driving back and forth to work anymore. They have 2 to 3 extra hours or even more every day that they can now spend with themselves. But doing that activity will really help us to become conscious of how we're spending our time and to take better control of how we're spending our time. Because when you track it, you can control it. That means our time, our money, our resources, our self-care. Absolutely.
Well, and I want to add on to that. When I was growing up, my grandfather used to say what our hourly rate was. And then whenever we had that luxury item we wanted to go look at, he goes, how many hours did you have to work to pay for that?
Right.
And you would go, what? And so you sit here now, you look at some of the things you spend money on, and you're like, wait a minute, it really cost me this many hours of work. And when you really think about how long it takes you to pay for something, it helps you not to spend the money when you realize it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. So all of that to take a pause before we purchase. And thank you so much for sharing that story and those tips. We're going to talk a little bit more about this and how our self-care is reflected in our self-control as well. And I'm going to bring Shamyra back in with us. Hey, Shamyra. Now, y'all, I didn't get the memo, so they look all cute and they're pink. But there we go. It's balanced. So thank you, ladies, for being here, for talking with us about this self-care and self-control, because it's so key. So we talk about what to do, and we'll talk about how much time that takes for us to be able to find a good balance. So what are some key things that you would recommend that women kind of explore in finding what works for them in terms of self-control, Shamyra?
Well, as Bree was talking, I instantly was reminded of this post that I saw last week, Bree, and it was, I pulled it up on my phone. So Mess in a Bottle, if anybody, you may or may not have heard of her, but she does a lot of shirts that have these messages on them. Well, she teamed up with the Budgetnista, and she came up with a shopping tote, and I have it in my cart right now because I need it, because you're not by yourself. I put that up there because you're not by yourself. It says, stick to the list. And it has signed Budgetnista. And so this is a really cool thing for me because it's a visual cue.
Yeah.
So not just any old reusable shopping bag, right? But having this bag that says, look, stick to the list. Like, get in there and get your fine parts out. Don't get anything else. And we need that. And I specifically reposted this to my stories, and I was like, how many of y'all need this for Target? Like, you don't have to raise you could just blink at me twice, and I know you need it. So, I think in general, visual cues for me. I was thinking you need it. But visual cues are great, right? Visual cues I use for myself because that's what works for me. You have to know what works for you. So I need sometimes visual cues to remind me of the things that I need to do to take care of myself. If that means that I need to be taking vitamins and I have to sit them out so that I can take those vitamins, whatever the thing is that I need to see it as a reinforcement for me to remember to do this particular thing to take care of myself. The other thing that I wanted to say, and this is kind of more around mindset still, understand that self-investment is as important, right, as everything else. Looking at your self-care as an investment in you.
Yes.
And understanding that it is the very best investment you can make and that you will always get a positive return, right? Yeah. And so that's so key. In that self-investment piece, like if you were investing in the market, how would you invest, right? You look at where you want to be in 5 years. You look at where you want to be in 10 years. You look at all these different factors. Well, you can do that same thing with your self-care and consider it self-investment and understanding that you are worth it and the return is always, always, always going to be good.
Absolutely. Here on Mindful Money Moment, we talk about the emotional ROI, the emotional return on investment. So, understanding that there are two types of returns, regardless of how we choose to spend our money, making sure that one of those types of returns are what we gain from that purchase or that spend, so that our money isn't just growing wings and flying away from us. So if it's an emotional return, then that's going to give us the peace of mind that we need in order to maintain the abundance that continues to flow for us. And that means if we're at peaceful in our mind, we have a high vibe for our money to continue to generate and to flow and to come. One of the things I say to myself is breathing in and breathing out, that money comes to me effortlessly.
Yes.
I allow it to leave me freely. I'm not pinching and holding on to every little thing like those hoarders you talked about, Bree, because sometimes people are scared of letting stuff go because they feel like they're not going to have enough. But knowing that and say to yourself, I am enough. I have enough. I do enough. God is my provider. Recognizing that it is so much bigger than we are personally. Because if we are the end all, say all, be all, we're going to be scared because we know that it's unpredictable, that it's uncertain, But if we are recognizing that there is a greater force in power that is at work for us, and if we open our eyes to see how that force works for us to maintain us on a regular basis, and we can see the blessings that we receive, the connections that are made, and the information that is fed into us, so that we're able to be at peace and to have that abundance, then we can have what I call an abundance flow, and keep it going, so that our cup is full and overflowing.
Yes, that's
it. We want to be able to serve everybody else from the overflow. If your cup is not full, you can't do nothing for nobody else. That's it.
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, that's that whole Psalm 23:5 mindset is what I call it. Like, my cup runneth over, my cup overfloweth.
Absolutely.
We're not just wanting to fill, we need overfilling. And so we want our cup to be running over. I heard you say that earlier, and I was like, yes, pouring out of our overflow and not out of what we need,
Yeah. And so it's okay for us in showing self-control to say what? No, to say what, Bree? I just said it.
You gave the answer.
I gave you away.
You gave the answer.
I know.
But it's also when you have you can't have the overflow if you're not taking care of yourself. Yeah. And as we go through the day-to-day basis, we have to make sure we're making our time to do the things that will refill the cup. And, we have to be responsible, like you said, with the self-control. Are you being controlled with the abundance that is being given to you? Are you respecting the abundance that's being given to you? And do you understand how important you were for the universe to give you what you've gotten at this time? And I think sometimes we really forget that it's going to keep coming. Right now you may be a little afraid, or it may be a bad time, or you got some crazy news, or you're not feeling good, but it's going to come back. It may not be time right this second, but the cup is coming back. It's going to be full.
Yeah. And the thing is that it truly does take for us being open and willing to let go, so that our hand is open, so that we can then receive. Because if we keep our hand closed and we're holding on to every little thing that we have, then we miss the opportunities that come by us. It's through the opportunity where we may have an opportunity to give. I think of another scripture, like what you mentioned, Shamyra, the one that talks about it's better to give than it is to receive. That is because of what we receive in the giving process. It's like and that's where the overflow comes in. It's because when we are giving from the overflow, then we can look to be filled from the source. When we are not looking at ourselves as a resource, then, to be serving or stepping in the place of the source, because then we become depleted. Then we talk about, is your cup half full or your cup half empty? And the thing is, even if your cup is half full, then that means you're depleted. It's not enough, you know? And so sometimes when we feel like it's not enough, it's because really it is. But we have to know that we can make it enough by relying on the creator, that source, to fill us up and getting to the point where we're able to overflow, and making sure that we're keeping control of our spending, we're keeping control over our habits, so that we are doing what's in our best interest, so that then we can overflow and serve others, you know. And that's where we find that balance to be
Also,
healed and whole.
I wanted to throw in there too is that we have to ask for help as part
Yeah,
of self-care.
absolutely.
Sometimes as women, I know as a Black woman, I think I'm super mama and I go to do everything myself. And there is nothing wrong with asking for help. And we have to help others understand that we're a team. And once you find your circle and your tribe, you can get what you need without feeling guilty about asking for help. No one should ever make you feel guilty or shamed for being unable. And so please fill your cup up, but keep it full by asking for help sometimes, because sometimes we need somebody to reach over and pour that water in our cup for us because we're too tired to lift.
Yeah, because when we're not pouring into them, then they can be pouring into us. Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's reciprocal, you know, and we all get filled up by the source, you know, one way or another. Yeah, absolutely. Being able to take it from that perspective and continue to grow. So thank you, ladies. I appreciate you both for sharing your perspective, for sharing your insight, for sharing the tips about how we can make these necessary adjustments to really sit down and look at what are those self-care techniques that we can benefit from for ourselves, and recognize that from time to time it's going to change. You know, it may not be the same thing all the time. You know, you might have gotten that awesome, amazing relaxation feeling from one self-care technique, and then something shifts in your life and now you need to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe doing a staycation was good during COVID-19, you know, because it was safe for the family and you got to enjoy your home, because many of us spent so much time away from home, we didn't have a chance to enjoy home, but we got a chance to enjoy being home. But now that things are getting better and we're lifting, now maybe you need to plan a vacation, you know, to like really get away. You know, and maybe for those families, those moms and dads who always took the kids, maybe you take the kids to grandparents or to a relative's house to stay for the time that you and your partner, you know, your ace boon coon, you get together and y'all go and have a good old time without the kids. And then you can tell them all about it and they'd be like, what y'all did? Okay. But they can't be so mad. They happy that mommy and daddy are doing this, you know, and spending that time, because then you'll be better mommy and daddy to come and serve them. And they will see the difference. I will never forget it. One mother said her daughter talked to her about how happy she was that mommy was home and not going out to work anymore. She says she told her in so many words, she was a completely different person. She said simply, you're happier. She wasn't doing that drive back and forth to work anymore. You know, that stress on the road, that road rage, that energy that gets built up, that frustration. You know, you're at the workplace where you are uncomfortable all day long, you know, maybe doing work and getting things accomplished. Yeah. But you're not comfortable in you're not in your element, you know, and then you drive home and you've got other people, you picking up their energy all over the place. Maybe they had a bad day at work and, you know, they cutting you off in traffic, and, you know, traffic is taking you 3 times as long to get home, you know, and you have to pay attention to those things, because simple self-care techniques mean that even in the moment, so being emotionally intelligent doesn't mean that we will always catch ourselves. What it does mean, though, is that we will be aware when we have a trigger response, and that we will be conscious of correcting.
That's right.
You know, so when we have this moment, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I did that. I don't want to do that again. So let me just be conscious. What got me to that point? Let me not do that again.
Yeah, I think that there's something that I shared recently when I was at Coke speaking to the women, and I talked about one of the self-care tools, or, you know, kind of tips, tools, you know, is pension tracking. And that kind of falls into that category. So being aware of what is building the tension and tracking it throughout your day.
Okay, so tell them, how can they do that? Like, what would they do in one day if they wanted to do their tension tracking? What does that look like?
So again, it kind of looks like, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but it goes back to self-awareness. There's just nothing that we're able to really shift and change or transform without being aware of self. If you are on autopilot and you are not operating in consciousness, you'll never be able to change everything. You can't outrun that. So it's about practicing self-care almost as if it is a muscle, and you have to exercise that muscle. So in practicing your self-awareness, dialing in, and maybe if you have to, if you need a visual cue, you know, an audio cue, whatever you need, find your phone, check in with yourself, or say something like, how are you doing right now? Pause for, and it doesn't have to be long. It could be a 30-second check-in with yourself. How am I feeling right now? But set those throughout the day and actually track it, because a lot of times we're not aware, and that tension is rising and it's rising and it's rising. And if you're not tracking it, by the time you get ready to boil over, you're not even able to say to someone, I need a minute.
Right.
I just, you know, mommy needs a minute. And we've all done it. I've done it. You know, and then I have to go back, and I will apologize to my children. You know what? Mommy was short. I was short. That wasn't right. I apologize for that. You know, here's what I'm going to do better, because I believe that we owe them that. They're little people. They matter too. But that tension tracking looks like that. It goes back to checking in with yourself and really tracking how you're feeling, because a lot of times in the workday, you can build up a lot of tension. It can be a lot of little things in your workday that's building that up. Then you've got the traffic thing. And I really recommend, if you are going out to work and coming back in, check it before you go in the house.
Yeah. And I want to say something, kind of back up on where you were when you said that you go and apologize to the kids. I was one who did that as well. I didn't treat my children like they were, you know, I don't know, for lack of a better word, children, right? I didn't treat them like children. I treated them like human beings.
Yes.
You know, because I believe that they were conscious enough to recognize when I was wrong.
Yes.
And if I hid that or I try to pretend like that wasn't going, you know, what happened, they would look at me side eye. Right. But I found that what would happen was that I would apologize to them, and they would appreciate that. And I'll tell you, it paid off. My son was 24 years old when he came to me and he hugged me, and he thanked me for being who I was with him growing up, you know, and that for me was like, you know, it's like, okay, so I did something right.
Yes, mama. Yes, mama. We all relate. Boy, mom.
Boy, mom. And that's the thing too, when you're in the house all the time in this pandemic, you know, and so you're not getting that break. You know, you kind of miss school a little bit because you're not getting that break to actually miss each other during the day. So when tensions are high, there's not really anywhere to go. So, you know, when you're in the house, I've created spaces where everyone has their own space in addition to their bedroom, because going to your bedroom is a punishment, right? So if you have a place downstairs, this is your space. This is where you work. This is where you play. I have my own space. Your oldest has his own space. They all can go do their own thing. And I try my best not to worry them to death, but to give ourselves enough space to get out that tension. You know, you're mad at mommy, I'm mad at you, everybody's mad at each other. That tension is thick. It's like a house full of just humidity, and it's just there sitting all day. So I have to make sure that we have space to detox from each other. So you can say, okay, you know what? I was mad. This is why I was mad. You still mad? And if you have a right to be, and, you know, sometimes my youngest will write me a letter and slide it under the door. I'm okay with that. Or I get a text message. I'm okay with all of that. But we have to get rid of that tension. And I think sometimes what happens is we sit in it, and then it all gets funky.
Yeah, we let it fester. Yeah. And that's another thing, is making sure that we're not just doing that with the kids, but that we're doing that with adults as well. Yeah. You know, because we okay. I have one theory. That's we're all 5 years old in big bodies. We're all just five, this many. That's it. And we just have more responsibility. So that's why we call it adulting. You know, because we got to make sure the bills are paid. We got to make sure we got food on the table, you know, all those things that we have to do. But we really just want to play around sometimes, you know, and we have to allow ourselves with self-control and self-care to be able to do that. You know, but we have to teach our children how to do that as well, because there's so much stress that they can take on if we're not paying attention to them and training them about how to care for themselves and how to control themselves in challenging circumstances, that it can truly become out of control for them later on in life. And they may not be able to dial back from that. You know, it's when we get into situations like what you were talking about, Bree, with the hoarders, you know, or, you know, sometimes we get into situations where people are so depressed that, you know, it's just overwhelming to them. You know, and so we want to make sure that we're being conscious enough about ourselves as well as those in our environment to check in on them, you know, and to make sure that if they need to take some time, I used to call it a mommy timeout. You know, I live alone now because both my kids are grown, you know, they're doing their thing. But I used to have my mom, I said, you know what, mommy needs to go into timeout. So give me 10 minutes.
Yes.
And they'd be like, okay. And they would go. And I said, y'all can go. We were doing homeschool. And I say, all right, break. Mommy needs time out. Y'all go play.
Mommy
and they love it. Yeah.
Mommy needs time out. Say that, right? Like, give yourself permission to take a time out or put yourself in time out. Like, give yourself, I have to do it on a regular basis. You've got teen boys. Yours is grown. And mine are 7 and 9. So I legit.
Yeah.
This past weekend, I was, you know what? I'm gonna just.
Right. A minute.
I need this because tracking my attention. I was like, I'm about right here.
Yeah.
This much to go. And that's not a lot, y'all. So I'm just.
It gets better. Don't give up.
Absolutely. But that's the attention tracker. I love that because I use an emotional scale in my emotional intelligence classes to help them to kind of gauge, okay, where am I? 5 is the midpoint where we are balanced. But then if you're on the high end of the scale between 6 and 9, then, you know, of course, 6 and 7 you're a little bit over, but you can kind of dial it back and put yourself back into balance. 8 and 9 is where you need help.
Danger.
And you're either in rage, you know, and just not able to kind of pull it together. You need time out, seriously, time out, you know, and take some time, do some exercises, do the journaling, do the breathing, like the meditation, take some time to really recenter yourself. Now on the lower scale, of course, then you've got the below 5, 4 and 3, which is, you know, on the low scale, you're not feeling great. You're, you know, down a little bit. Okay. But you're able to kind of figure out what it is. Maybe you need to eat, you know, boost your sugar back up and, you know, get back in the flow of things. But if you get down to a 1 and 2, then that's where you call for help. Just like what you're talking about, Bree, making sure that we have the resources available. So making sure that we have a friend, a family member, someone close to us who we can reach out and let them know, look, I'm feeling 1 or 2 right now. I'm feeling 3 or 4, or they'll call you and say, okay, so what number are you today? I had a girlfriend who, when I was heavy in transition, you know, first, you know, changing and into separation and going through that process, she would call me and she'd say, okay, what number are you today? You know, and that was her.
Love that.
Knowing, you know, it's like, it's not about how are you, what number are you today?
Yeah.
You can say fine, because you can be fine at 9 or you know, you can be fine at 1.
You can always be fine. There's always room for fine, unfortunately. It's always. And, you know, the fact that you just said that and that someone checks in on you, sometimes self-care is monitoring your friend. and cleaning up that friends list and getting rid of those relationships that are no longer serving who you are now. Not to say that they don't care about you and that they don't love you, but who you were pre-pandemic and who you are currently may be two different things.
Yes.
And so it's a lot of relationships that are going to be shaping and shifting. And you have to make sure that if you're the friend that's cut out, that you don't get mad about it because, you know, we're shifting, we're changing. My priorities 2 years ago are different than my priorities now. My priorities when I was married are very different now that I'm divorced.
Yes.
So, you know, and people tend to see you where they found you. They don't see where you're growing. And so we have to be able to say, hey, I'm growing. Are you going to grow with me? Or do I have to, you know, do I have to just see you periodically?
Grow out of you.
Yeah, grow out of you.
You have to grow out of you as well. So, you know, it is really a thing right now. And I'm finding I'm having a lot of conversations with people who are hurt because they feel left behind or their tribe isn't doing what they're doing. And we have to process where are you in your process? Because when I leave this earth, ain't nobody, I can't grab one of my BFFs to come with me. You know, we go back to see our maker on our own.
Right.
So we have to create some comfort for ourselves and look at some of those relationships. And do you have the person who's going to call you and ask you, where are you today on the scale? Or do you have the person who's going to call you, data dump all their stuff on you? And then you sit there and you like, I just called to say I didn't feel good today, but you didn't get to speak or any of that. And, you know, it's a couple of times where now with my friends I have to say, do you have a moment for me to can I check on something with you? Do you have a moment for me to talk about my work situation? And sometimes I have one friend, she'll be like, no, you can tell me all about you, but I don't want to hear about work. Or you can tell me about something fun that happened today. I don't want to hear about your job. And I'm like, okay, you know, but I appreciate that boundary.
That's honest.
That's
real.
It's a boundary.
Yeah. Can I add to that?
Absolutely.
When you were talking about that, it reminded me of a recent concept that I came across. I was actually researching some stuff in the nonprofit sector, and I came across this concept, but it really resonated with me for self-care, and it's called asset mapping. And do you know, so you're nodding your head, Bree, so you probably know about that, but translating this for the self-care space, right? So asset mapping in the, I guess, kind of like nonprofit world is about really looking at the community and the surrounding area to see where all the assets are and the resources are, instead of focusing on what is lacking and it's actually the opposite of a needs-based approach. It's focusing on not what the community needs, but what it already has that's an asset. And so when I thought about this for self-care, I was like, this is so valuable. I'm going to start doing this with my clients. We are going to do asset mapping.
Awesome.
Because this way you already have a map of the resources, because sometimes, I don't know about y'all, but when I'm in it, I can't think. You know,
right.
Coming out of it and people, why didn't you call me? You should have called me. We have resources. We could have supported you. I don't know. I didn't. I was just in it. But if we asset map as a proactive measure for self-care, then you already know where your resources are and what they can provide you for that particular area. So what you need, building that village, building that self-care support, whether that's just a friend that calls and says, how was your self-care today? You know, how's your self-care going? Where are you on, you know, the mood elevator, as we say at work, but where are you? And really just mapping out those assets, because it's really probably likely that you have every resource that you need already within your circle and within your village, but you may not know because you haven't tapped in. But if you go out and you actively look to fill in this grid, then it'll already be there. And when you're in a tailspin or when you're in a moment, you won't have to think. You can just refer to your asset map, your personal asset map.
That's like when you already got a bag in your closet and you go out and buy the same bag because you didn't realize that you already had it.
I do that with me all the time.
Listen, okay. The one was lover and the other one was crocodile.
Right. But we have to do that. We've got to keep track of our assets. Absolutely. That's awesome, Shamyra. So I know that there's going to be a number of ladies who will reach out to you and look forward to doing that asset mapping, making sure that they get through that process. You guys make sure that you tune in as well to Bree Nachelle's wonderful podcast. It's so fabulous. And I'm going to have a link to everything on the website at marimorelife.com. So make sure that you come back and visit Mari More Life, and we'll have more information for you. We thank you so much for taking this time to be with us this evening, this afternoon, this morning. Whenever you catch us on the replay, make sure you leave your comments in the comment section below the video. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us individually, but also feel free to ask your questions in the comments, because there may be some other ladies who have the same question or may not know to ask that question, and you post that question and it brings up something for them that they can now work on, or something that they can now grow on, And so that's how we work together as a community, making sure that everyone is supported so that we can truly all be healed, and whole. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Shamyra. We look forward to having you here again with us soon, as well as with you, Bree. Did you have a comment you wanted to make in closing? No, you good?
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you for allowing me to come on and share. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. You ladies are very welcome. Thank you so much for being here again. And make sure that you all can connect with us on Mindful Money Moment. Feel free to reach out to Mari More Life. And as always, you know that I'm here to support you in both your emotional intelligence as well as your money management. So feel free to reach out to me at marimorelife.com. My next seminar is coming up on June the 5th, Saturday, June 5th. So feel free to go to the website and register for that. It is there especially for you. And of course, we've got your freebie ready. So you get your free gift when you sign up for that seminar. And I will be looking forward to seeing you on Saturday morning. So you guys have a wonderful week. I'll be back on Wednesday with wealthy women, that's especially for you in this community. And we're going to talk about this fourth Wednesday in the month. We'll be talking about our net worth network. And we've got a super financial lady who's going to be here. And that is it. She is exactly that. A financialist is what she calls herself. So we're going to have a good time with that on Wednesday. Thank you again, ladies, for joining me. And I will look forward to seeing you on the next one. Have an amazing, amazing day. Take care. See ya.